Thanks for joining us, John. Let's first talk about this. How much of a difference will the lifting of the sanctions make to the oil market and the region itself?
Well, in fact, this has been the dark cloud that has hung over the oil market for the last 4 years. So this potentially could open up a new era in relations with Iran. But Sarah, as you're suggesting here, it's a long road back. Iran's production kind of peaked out about 10 years ago to 4 million barrels a day. Last tally, their production on a daily basis, 2.5 million barrels a day. But their exports have been swinging between 700,000 and 1.5 million barrels a day. So take that last number, exports of 1.5 million barrels a day. They've lost that amount in exports due to the sanctions, and it's been costing them about $48 billion a year, with record oil prices of $100 a barrel. So when oil prices have hit their peak, Iran's lost out on the revenue to the tune of nearly $50 billion. Now, Secretary Kerry tried to answer the critics who are suggesting they're being too easy on Iran. It'll loosen up some $4 billion immediately that's already in the bank. But the Secretary of State is suggesting that most of the sanctions here will stick.
During this 6-month phase, the oil sanctions that will remain in place will continue to cause over $25 billion in lost revenues to Iran, or over $4 billion a month. That is compared to what Iran earned before this took effect, the sanctions.
And the reason they're losing that revenue is their major customers, and I'm standing here in New Delhi, India, China, South Korea, and Japan, due to the pressure from the United States and the European Union, have been forced to cut back their imports, Sarah, by 15 to some 33%. So you can see it's been a worldwide pressure on Iran. And in fact, as every 6 months goes by, that screw tightens ever so tightly here, putting even more and more pressure on Iran. So one thing that could happen here with these negotiations that they have, it could lift the cloud of uncertainty over the energy market. We often talk about that risk premium. It's about 10 to 15%. And we could see that starting to ease depending on how the negotiations go from here, Sarah.
Let's talk about the impact of these sanctions as well. I mean, is it the sanctions that brought Iran to the table in the first place? And what impact did they have?
Well, it's incredible because in 2012 in particular, we saw the rial, particularly with the heated debate of President Ahmadinejad, saw the rial drop 70 to 80% at one point. Now, it's recovered here with this new administration, but we saw that poultry prices tripled. We saw that bread prices quadrupled. The subsidies that were going into energy were lifted because the government couldn't afford it anymore. And we even saw layoffs of 800,000 to 1 million people in the state sector. Even the car sector, for example, had layoffs. So the pressure was intense. Now, we've had a new era come in here, the language much more moderate, and this has taken the pressure off the currency and the economy. But again, a 6-month window. Let's see how the first 6 months go. Then you'll see the ability for Iran to go back to the negotiating table to see if the sanctions can be lifted. Also, long-term damage to the energy sector, Sarah. After 10 years of underinvestment into the energy sector right now, this has crippled not only the ability to export right now, but the needed reinvestment to boost production back up to that target in 2003, 2004 of 4 million barrels a day, Sarah.